The transport shuttle descended in a graceful arc, shimmering as it passed through the atmospheric shielding of the Galactic Academy of Tactical Excellence. From the viewport, Cadet James Rourke could see the sprawling facility, domed lecture, halls, outdoor training arenas carved into alien terrain, and towers that stretched like obsidian needles into the sky. It was unlike anything Earth had ever built, a pristine, militarized fusion of dozens of species aesthetics. James adjusted his academy-issued uniform, a dark, navy blue bodysuit that felt just a touch too tight. Earth-standard stitching, still, unfamiliar to most of the academy staff, hadn't been perfectly calibrated to his measurements. He ran a hand through his short-cropped hair and exhaled slowly. This was it. Humanity's first student at the Galactic Academy. The landing bay hissed open, releasing a burst of ionized air and light mist. Alien cadets of every shape and size watched as James stepped onto the arrival platform. Chittering whispers and unreadable expressions followed him as he moved through the crowd. He stood a head shorter than most, his physique wiry but not particularly intimidating. Compared to the 8-limbed Talvac warriors, or the dense granite-skinned Forai, he looked unremarkable. Yet every step he took was steady, measured, not defiant, but not meek either. He had trained for this, extensively, not just physically, but culturally, psychologically. He had studied the customs of over 50 species and their military doctrines. But he knew all too well that the Academy wasn't here to honor him. He was an experiment. He arrived at his assigned barracks and found it already occupied by his 3 bunkmates. A sibilant-sounding reptilian named Kirix, an orb-shaped telepath called Velium, and a bored-looking feline predator from the Venari Pride Worlds named Stasa. All 3 paused to watch James enter. "You're the human," Kirix said, voice low and clicking. "I thought you'd be taller." James dropped his pack without breaking eye contact. "Everyone says that." Velium floated closer, its translucent jelly skin rippling. "You emit uncertainty." It pulsed into the room psychically, but also stubbornness. "How strange." "That about sums me up," James muttered. Later that day, the cadets gathered in the main hall, a massive amphitheater ringed with holographic displays and tactical readouts. The walls themselves seemed to hum with stored energy. Over 100 species stood at attention, awaiting the arrival of the instructor. Commander Trizal entered from the upper dais. 8 spindly limbs clicked across the platform, and his multifaceted eyes scanned the room with practiced intensity. His carapace bore medals from more campaigns than most students had read about. "Cadets," Trizal began, voice enhanced by a neural amplifier. "War is not won by strength alone, nor by technology. It is won by adaptability, creativity, resolve." He paused. "To that end, your first challenge will test your homeworld's tactical heritage. You are to construct a functional weapon, using only materials found in your classroom quadrant. No imported tech, no advanced energy systems, raw creativity." Whispers erupted across the hall. Excitement, concern, confusion. For most species, weapon meant plasma projectors, gravity disruptors, or neural fangs. James's stomach sank. He had read the supply manifest for their training area, mostly modular, furniture, basic simulation tools, and a lot of inert alloys. No electronics, no crafting tools, no printers. Trizal continued. "You have 4 rotations. Presentations will begin immediately thereafter." As the cadets dispersed, many buzzing with plans and schematics, James trailed behind. He could already hear snatches of mocking tones. "Maybe the human will throw rocks. Do they still use gunpowder? What? Could he possibly build without Earth's toys?" James said nothing. He simply walked back to the classroom, his mind racing. There had to be something. A way to represent Earth's legacy. Not its machines, not its tech, but something older, something primal. Landing in a valley of twisted root structures and geyser fields, the team fanned out, guided only by topography and inferred heat echoes from enemy pathing. Their goal: neutralize the insurgent command post without triggering alarm systems or drawing orbital sensor sweeps. It was surgical warfare, but dirtier. The first kill came via silence, Juno spotted a two-man recon pair taking sensor readings near a fallen obelisk. Aaron used a shot bounce. An arrow fired off a rock face, ricocheting to strike one target in the femoral line. Varel delivered a nerve pulse via handheld probe on the second. No noise, no flash. Just two missing bodies. Next came infiltration. They moved through steam vents and blind gullies. Reek sensed emotion trails left by panicked guards. Juno mapped tremor patterns to avoid tripwires. Aaron never issued verbal orders. Only gestures, hand signals, and soft contact taps. At the command hub, an overturned mining station surrounded by sentry dogs and bioscanners. Aaron improvised again. She sent the Ithari Windsinger ahead with a reflective thread net strung between sticks. In the moonlight, it shimmered just enough to trigger the sentry's light-based filters, causing a software cascade in their targeting subsystems. While the dogs panicked and systems rebooted, her team slipped inside. The enemy commander never saw it coming. One arrow silenced him. Another took out the relay console. The entire network collapsed in under 42 seconds. By morning, orbital scans confirmed full extraction with 0 casualties. The debrief was surreal. Back at the academy, even Rask seemed momentarily awed. "You disabled a fortified position," he said slowly, without ever raising an alert. "We weren't loud enough to trigger one," Aaron replied. "That's the difference." The War Doctrine Directorate issued a joint memo 3 days later. New protocol added, SOP variant 1123H, Human Pattern Disruption Insertion Teams. Recommended for deployments in stealth, sabotage, and containment operations. Aaron had built a doctrine from desk scraps and training drones. Now, she'd written it into galactic warfare. The council chamber on Alien Station was unlike anything Aaron had ever seen. Suspended in the heart of a rotating satellite, the room rotated slowly to preserve the sensation of weight, casting moving shadows across crystalline walls. Delegates from over 70 species watched in complete silence as Commander Rask stood at the center of the floor beside her, his claws folded behind his back. The holographic projection behind him played in loops footage from Delta 9, overlaid with cooperative telemetry. Aaron saw herself and her team move like ghosts through the jungle mist, flash annotated with terms like low-profile interdiction and non-reactive trajectory analysis. Rask turned to the room. "The question before this council is no longer whether primitive technologies have merit," he growled, voice carrying through the chamber. "It is whether we will allow ourselves to be constrained by convenience." He gestured to the projection. This human cadet was given no resources. She improvised a system capable of neutralizing high-threat insurgents and trained others to replicate it, without cost, without exposure. He stepped back. Aaron stood alone now. "Do you wish to address the council?" the presiding arbiter asked. She nodded once. "I didn't come here to teach you how to fight," she said plainly. "You all know that better than I do. I came here because sometimes the obvious solution is the wrong one. And sometimes the joke weapon beats the prototype." The silence held. Then murmurs. Translations flared through multi-sensory receivers across the council. Admiral Czech pulsed his agreement. The cooperative formally accepts variant 1123H into tactical doctrine, effective immediately. The room erupted in calculated approval. A policy ratified. Hours later, Aaron stood alone on the observation deck of the academy. Rask approached quietly. "You know what happens next?" She nodded. "They'll make it a program." "They already have. They want you to oversee it." "I'm not ready to teach." "You're not being asked to teach, you're being asked to build. What you started, it's no longer a story. It's strategy." Aaron looked out across the stars. "Do you think they'll remember what it came from? That it started with nothing but a room full of broken chairs and an old drone?" Rask's voice was quiet. "They'll remember that someone looked at that pile of nothing and made it deadly. That's what matters." Later that week, Cadet Aaron Voss left the academy. She was no longer a student. She was the first operative architect of the 1123H program. From the void between stars to the hot jungles of disputed moons, Small units began to appear. Archers, trappers, saboteurs, teams who could disappear in an instant, strike without being seen and walk away leaving only confusion. The cooperative learned to fear silence. And somewhere, in 100 briefing rooms, a new phrase began echoing among commanders. The amphitheater buzzed with anticipation. Rows of alien cadets murmured in dozens of languages, bioluminescent eyes flickering and pheromone trails mixing into an atmosphere of excitement. Today was the showcase, where each cadet would present their handmade weapon, explain its function, and perform a short demonstration. James stood off to the side, bow slung across his back with a makeshift leather strap fashioned from a torn satchel. He kept his arrows in a repurposed classroom canister, painted black to dull the shine. He rolled his shoulders, jaw tight, heartbeat steady. He wasn't nervous. He was ready. One by one, the cadets displayed their marvels. There were sonic blades, auto-targeting darts, resonance disruptors, molecular slicers. Some devices shimmered in dazzling colors, others hummed with contained violence. Each demonstration earned applause, nods of approval, or curious questions. From Commander Trizal, James watched in silence. Then Trizal's voice cut through the air. "Cadet Rourke, human, you may proceed." The room quieted. Heads turned. James stepped forward. A Talvac cadet muttered, "Is he holding a stick?" Another whispered, "Maybe it's ceremonial." James set down the canister and removed the bow with careful reverence. He stepped to the center of the stage, bowed slightly to the instructor, then turned to the class. "This is called a longbow," he said, loud and clear. "Crafted from classroom chair legs, conduit wire, and friction. Tape, the arrows are repurposed writing instruments with laminated fletching." A beat. Laughter erupted, not cruel but incredulous. "A toy," scoffed Stassa. Even Veluum's psychic presence rippled with amusement. "Outdated, inefficient." James ignored them. He took an arrow, knocked it to the string, and slowly drew back. The bow groaned under tension, but held. He loosed. The arrow flew across the room with a whisper and struck a practice target. Dead center. Silence. He knocked another, turned slightly, and fired at a suspended drone. The arrow struck its propulsion unit, triggering a burst of sparks. The drone spiraled and crashed. Murmurs of disbelief. Trizal leaned forward. James picked up a third arrow. This time, he took aim at a kinetic simulation dummy that had repelled most energy-based weapons during earlier tests. He released. The sharpened pencil pierced the dummy's throat joint and stuck. Trizal's mandibles clicked softly. Accuracy, penetration, kinetic delivery. Primitive, yet effective. James turned to face the class again. "This weapon has no energy core, no auto guidance. It's silent, reusable, and easily improvised. My ancestors used it to hunt game and fight wars. I built it with scraps and instinct. That's the point." No one laughed this time. Veluum pulsed once more, adaptability reaffirmed. Trizal nodded slowly. "A reminder that progress does not always mean superiority. Well done, Cadet Rourke. We will test it further in the combat sim." James gave a sharp nod and walked off the stage, adrenaline still racing. From the shadows, Gruth the janitor stood near the edge of the room. He offered a single approving grunt. James didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. The weapon was silent, precise, lethal in the right hands, and most importantly, it worked after an electromagnetic surge test that had rendered 2 other energy-based weapons inert. James was yet summoned to Trizal's office. The commander's chamber was a minimalist chamber of reflective black walls and holographic war tables. Trizal stood at one of them, watching a slowed recording of James's final shot. "Your kind," he said without turning, "has yet to earn a reputation in galactic warfare, and yet you show promise." James waited, hands behind his back. "This weapon of yours," Trizal continued, "was once used on your planet for hunting." "Yes, sir," James replied. "Also in warfare, for thousands of years. We only stopped using bows because we invented guns, and we kept those because they're simple, Reliable, like this. Trizal finally turned. Simplicity is often underestimated, but it endures, it adapts. I have submitted a request for this design to be evaluated by the Tactical Innovation Committee. James blinked. Seriously? I do not jest. The fact that you improvise this weapon without advanced materials speaks to a capacity we value. Creative aggression, instinctive design, human traits. You will find more eyes on you now, Cadet Rourke. More eyes, indeed. The next few cycles saw James approached by cadets who had ignored or mocked him before. Some wanted to inspect the bow. Others asked if he could teach them how to draw it. Valoom pulsed questions into his mind late into the night about material flexion and tension dynamics. Kirix, formerly aloof, now observed James's morning training with quiet intensity. It was clear the demonstration had done more than shock. It had stirred something, not just curiosity, respect. In the next tactics seminar, Trizal opened with a prompt. In the event of a complete energy blackout, how does your species respond? Cadets threw out answers: backup cores, cryo-sleep pods, hive mind suspension protocols. James raised his hand. We sharpened sticks. There was a pause. Trizal actually clicked in amusement. Efficient. After class, James found Gruth waiting outside. The janitor held something in his gnarled hands, an alien variation of a sling made from thermal cabling and polymer sheets. Ancient tool, Gruth said. My people used these before spaceflight. I forgot its feel, until I saw your bow. James accepted it with respect. Thank you. Maybe simple things still have power, Gruth murmured. James nodded. They always did. We just forgot.